wearing a lot of Kiowa clothes. Like I may wear a T-shirt that says Kiowa or has a picture of a Kiowa on it. But that's mostly, but that's kind of mostly what I express sometimes. It's the same life as you have. Like you're not just like, if you put on different clothes, you're not somebody different.
Hey, we're gonna hit soft toss. Remember, you gotta pay attention. Be careful.
Like most 10-year-olds, Cade Morgan spends his day in class and with friends.
Has and, yes, say both of them. Has spoken. He can't stand there by himself.
But for Cade, another world exists tucked away inside a grandmother's house. It's a world that's almost disappeared over the last 200 years. Cade is his family's hope for the future. A boy caught between two cultures.
I don't really know how to say it, but I do live in both worlds.
Every day, Cade's grandmother picks him up at the bus stop. The short trip from the gate to the house is a journey from the white world to a home where Indian traditions remain a way of life. Cade is the great-grandson of famed Kiowa 5 artist Stephen Mopope. At home, he's surrounded by the art and artifacts of his ancestors, including the beadwork of his grandmother, Vanessa Jennings.
I don't think of myself as an artist. I don't. I think of myself as a traditional Kiowa woman. But in America, it seems like everybody has to have a title, something to describe where they fit in American society. You wake up every morning and you don't say, well, I'm going to be Kiowa today. You know, you're just Kiowa every day. I started beading when I was a little girl, but my grandmother was such a good teacher, that she was able to make things fun.
As a young girl, Vanessa sorted beads the size of pinheads for her grandmother, who slid them onto a needle and down a length of thread a few at a time.
Each of these pieces, I want them to be as special as my grandmother's beadwork. Every time she finished something, it was like, wow, oh my goodness, it was just a miracle. This is the front of the buckskin dress, and you can see here the legs of the animal. It's as if my grandmother's there, and I can hear her say, is that your best? Is that the best you can do? This is the back of the dress. It's just very elegantly Kiowa.
Within 3 generations, traditional beadwork has almost disappeared.
Beadwork, at one time it was something that all women, they could do everything. They could make men's moccasins, women's moccasins. I mean, they brain tan the buffalo hides for teepee covers. You can't imagine a more labor-intensive kind of work. I want you to remember that with each piece, there's an important part of our culture. There's an important part of history that goes into each of these pieces. And I don't care how hard you try, there are going to be bits of my flesh and bits of my blood on the inside of each of the moccasins and leggings and buckskin dresses and cradle boards that I finish for you. So I mean, it truly is. There is a part of me that goes with each of these pieces. There are no other living, active, functioning cradle board makers. When I speak to school children, I tell them, Grandma's a dinosaur, because I see no one after me wanting to do this kind of work. Everyone has to make a decision on how they want to live their life. And I choose to live a life just a plain, simple life.
The family is preparing Cade by immersing him in the songs, the stories, language, and crafts of the Kiowa people.
This wall, because my grandmother died when I was 17, I felt like it was important to have an image to identify with the stories and the songs and the lullabies, so that the children would know who I'm talking about. It gives the person a face, it makes them real. And that's important because, you know, these traditions, they come from living, breathing human beings. These 3 photographs, the top photograph is my grandmother, Jeanette Berry. She was the wife of Stephen Mopope. And I remember that old lady saying, "Here, you're going to walk a long ways in this life. Let me carry you a while."
Vanessa takes every opportunity to teach the Kiowa traditions.
Our people have always been a nation of warriors. This dress, done on muslin, it's a record of war deeds. And right here you can see, in my family, we had captives. And this is a representation of my great-great-grandfather. He was captured by the Kiowas. Don't throw away the language. You know, it's important that not just my child, but my grandchild speak Kiowa, know Kiowa, to dress Kiowa, to participate in Kiowa things. You know, we owe it to them. Why should we forget our Kiowa language? Why should we throw away everything? You know, we owe it to those old people to take care of these traditional societies.
Native culture has been under assault for over 100 years. The threat came in many forms: smallpox, missionaries, barbed wire, and locomotives. And in the end, it came in the form of schools. After the Indians were forcefully removed east of the Mississippi, President Ulysses S. Grant and others decided that to peacefully settle the tribes on reservations, they would need to be civilized. Warriors were taught to use the plow, and children were sent away to boarding schools. Upon arrival, Indian boys and girls had their hair cut short. They were scrubbed and fit into neat little uniforms. They were taught to speak only English, to embrace the ideal of private property, and they were converted into Christianity.
We had tribal schools that were boarding schools, and when our people, the Muskogee Creek people, came into Indian Territory, one of our first schools was the Coweta, and it was called Coweta Mission, and it began in 1843.
A lot of our people were sent to Carlisle, a lot of them, and then they even helped build the schools like Chilocco, and they helped build Bacon, they helped build Haskell, and they knew education was where it was at. Our people were pretty far advanced on what was going to have to take place, and they taught them. They wanted to go to boarding schools. They wanted to learn these ways because that's how they were going to exist in this world, and they knew that. But in doing that, though, they had to sacrifice some of their ways because some of them come back and they didn't know their ways.
They were wanting everyone to become mainstream American citizens, and that was the beginning of shame. That was the beginning of teaching Indian was being dirty. Indian was no good. It wasn't just a matter of killing the physical person. It was the spiritual, the emotional, as well as the physical.
My mother in particular, when she went to school at Eufaula, she started in the 2nd grade. And I asked her what she had done in the first grade, and she said she had went to school at Bigsby. And I said, then why did you go on to the boarding school the next year? And she said, because I cried all that first year and didn't learn anything because I couldn't speak English. So I went to the boarding school, and there we were taught English. And she said, and we had to learn. We were punished if we spoke our language. And she said she remembered having to hold her hands out and being spanked with a big wooden ruler on her hands for speaking the language. Or sometimes she even got her mouth washed out with soap for speaking the language. By using the Bible as the main text for our reading and learning the English language, that did take us a lot away from our own traditional religion. I know even as I was growing up, you know, we were taught that the old traditional ceremonial or the old stomp dance, that part of our religion, that was pagan, and we shouldn't do that. That was not right.
When Joyce arrived at Haskell in the 1960s, boarding school was a changed place.
Of course, I got homesick for the first 2 weeks until I started checking out the young men, and then I decided, well, it's a good place anyway. I think I'll stay. Things were a lot different than when Mother attended here and when I attended here in the 1960s, because the things were a lot more lax. Of course, they were strict because there were so many students here. We had 2,000 students here, and they came from all points of the United States. There were several, you know, many different tribes that were here, so there were different cultures. Our cultures were encouraged in the 60s. We were able to do our beadwork. We were able to have powwows. We were able to sing our songs and speak our language. But when my mother was here, that was discouraged. They were trying to take the culture away from us and try to kill it. But in our generation, when we were here, it was a lot different. It was a little bit better. Although it was very strict, you know, when we were here. This was my room. We had on the inside of it, we had 2 closets on each side. It had a radiator in the middle, and then there was a desk in front of the radiator. And I had a single bed over here, and then there was a bunk bed over here that Caroline and Mary Jane used, and we each of us had our own little chest of drawers, and that was it. You know, it's a real small room, but all 3 of us shared it. This room here on the corner, there were Alaskan girls. There were about 6 of them in that room there, but they were all from Alaska.
Boarding schools gave students a good education, taught them a trade, but when they graduated, they did not send them home.
This was what the Bureau of Indian Affairs referred to as the relocation program. And at Haskell, they would educate us, and then they would send us to these all points where we would work. And it was just a way to get jobs for a lot of our people. But this is what started what we refer to now as that urban Indian. A person come right off the reservations or out of the Indian communities in Oklahoma and sent to all different parts of the United States to work. Some of the students went to Dallas, some went to Washington, D.C., some of them went to work in some of the federal offices. There were some students that went to San Diego, San Francisco, Los Angeles, just all points of the United States we were sent to. But it was a way of annihilation of our tribe. It was a way to go in and assimilate into the dominant society.
My grandparents, Fred and Judy Lookout, lived here, and then my parents lived here, Dora, Henry and Dora Lookout. And this is also where I grew up. It brings back a lot of memories. I spent a lot of my youth here, and growing up here and being part of this land. I started trying to learn the language in around 1971, 72. My mother and father were living, And I never ever had the inclination to learn it, but right about that time, I was around 30, 31, 32, didn't know anything about Osage, but they spoke it. But I never wanted to learn it. And just all of a sudden, I said, I want to learn it.
Once a culture loses its language, that culture ceases to exist. It was unfashionable to speak it, you know. I mean, if you spoke your language, you know, you were looked down upon here in Oklahoma. And many did not want to be caught doing that. And so many of them that could speak didn't. And so, but as we were at home, it was pretty safe. It was a safe environment.
I did hear my grandparents speak our language fluently. And it seemed like they were in a completely different world almost in their way of thinking. The old ones always said, I wish you could hear that the way I hear it, the language.
And I remember what it was like when I'd go to a function and they'd be all like sitting around here waiting for it to start, and they'd all be talking to themselves in Osage. And I'd hear them talking. And it just seems so familiar, so long, far away, but it seemed like a dream. But it's all gone now.
Many tribes have established language programs in a desperate attempt to save their spoken heritage.
Osage is a completely different language. I mean, there's no similarities at all between English or any other language of Europe and Osage language. It's just a completely different world.
Many of them have gone from extinct. There are many tribal languages that are extinct today. They go from extinct all the way to flourishing.
I sent some of our people to Hawaii because I think they lost their language. And our people told them what we were doing here, and they said that's about the right path. And they told them it took them 20 years to get their language back.
All Indian languages are oral languages. There was not a orthography, and that was a difficult part. And it's a part that most tribes, I know we're still struggling with too. What you see a lot is syllabaries, but one of the things, that's where they have certain symbols to represent certain sounds.
Away. Yeah, I'm glad you came by. I got a question. They were asking in class the other night.
Yeah.
Over there in Hominy. And I was telling them there's different words for morning. Now we this is our basic word. Kasich.
Yeah, kasich.
Yeah.
We have to do something that's never, ever been done before, and that's learn Osage in a classroom. So we have to come up with some kind of curriculum that will enhance learning some way. So we're kind of in a research mode, trying to figure out how to do this.
One of the things about language that when studying this, is that you want to follow along the natural progression of language acquisition. Children learn to speak the language before they learn to write it. Now, as adults, we want a visual. So that becomes a problem because many times adults want to look at a visual representation like the written word rather than following along. And one of the things we've always tried to do is that learn it first, then write it. And one of the problems with that is that you have to learn a whole new system. You have to learn a new syllabary or a new orthography. So that really restricts the success of acquiring the language.
We have a language here that the only way that we can teach it and the only way that we can get through to people is with English as an aid. But yet it's not a good aid because it don't have anything to do with Osage. You can't learn Osage using English because Osage is different than English. It's got a different lifestyle, it's got a different way to say it, it's got different meanings.
Okay.
You know, you can say, kiope. You know, and it just says, well, he already done that. Well, you're not going to find a he already done that in that.
Grass.
But that's what it means.
See, the only difference is where you put the nasal sound. Mahi and mahi. but they look almost exactly alike, but one means knife and one means grass.
It's kind of pitiful because
that's what I'm
I
saying.
said, when we get to a point where we feel like we're fluent,
Yeah.
when we get ready to talk to these, to go and talk, we don't have anybody to take it to but ourselves. We can't go say, hey, Mom, how's this sound? Or hey, Dad, or Grandpa, or Grandma. They're gone. And it's us. We're the ones that's going to be the judge on how we speak.
As you see up on the chalkboard here, I already have them written out. I'm just going to go right along with your paper.
I think it's good for the kids to be able to know where they came from and teach their children eventually, you know, and their grandchildren, their great-grandchildren. Because we're learning from all our elders and our aunts and uncles and grandmas, and a lot of us are all related, so it makes it a lot better. It's more comfortable.
We're trying to revive it, and I just need the commitment from people. And it's a commitment, and it's also a sacrifice, because it ain't going to be learned overnight. It ain't going to be learned in 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. The language that we have now is having to adapt to modern times. The comfort zone in our classes is English. That's just the way it is. Because when we go and start, I say, okay, we're going to do nothing but Osage. Well, they're just uncomfortable, and until they can get right back to English.
This door can mean some, but it doesn't always mean some all the time. This is a word that can change meaning depending on what you're talking about. When you come in that door, you got to think Osage. If you want to learn this language, you got to leave that English outside, totally.
English is such a powerful language. I always say it's big medicine, and it just takes over everything. And that's why this man said that it's just too hard for them to learn it. They've lived as a white man so long. I always say, well, I'm full-blood Osage, but I tell my class, but I'm a white man more than I'm an Indian, because about 90% of my life is living as a white man. But just a little bit of me still tries to stay in touch with our ways, you know, through the Inoshkaki concept. All them things that we do as Osages. What makes us Osage is our traditional values.
Each year, the Sam Noble Museum holds a Native American Youth Language Fair. The goal is to share, celebrate, and encourage others to learn their native tongue.
We've been coming here about now, this is our 4th year down here, and the kids always look forward to coming down here. They really enjoy being here, being around a college environment. It's just a real good treat for these kids. You know, they get to go and have pizza, and it's a real fun day for them.
We have entering the hall is the Osage Nation Language Program.
I think a lot of them don't really understand how close we are of completely losing that language. You know, I don't think they realize it. They think, well, they're having classes and the language is being saved, because I thought the same thing when I was young.
The greatest gift we have is a gift of language, a gift of culture, and like I said, in the gift of respect. And I think that what comes from that is pride. And that's what we're saying, is that, you know, to give pride to people is to acknowledge who you are.
We had some little Head Start children that was learning Osage words. They had a hard time getting them to learn 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 because they wanted to say, you know, they wanted to talk in Osage. Their comfort zone was Osage, so it can't work.
That was a good time, a good opportunity for our tribal members to learn the language. I mean, it's here, it's no cost, it's free, and we just need to get more people to come and learn.
Will be the Osage Nation Language Program. You'll step forward. Once again, give them all a big round of applause. Great job, everybody.
In 1967, an article about the Santa Fe Institute of American Arts changed Richard Ray Whitman's life.
That cover of that magazine caught my eye, and then a couple teachers helped me follow through and apply to the school. So then I began to realize the possibilities of being an artist once I arrived in Santa Fe at the school, because I met like students of other tribes, other nations, rural, urban, reservation, a range of people who are interested in being an artist.
On the way to New Mexico, Whitman's bus stopped in Oklahoma City.
Had a layover on my way to Santa Fe, 68, 67. This is my first, really, to see a real high concentration of, well, Skid Row, if you will, or visible numbers of American Indians. It struck me, and I had a 2-hour layover, so I just kind of walked around here, you know, and looked and looked. And I came from a small rural community, so it's kind of stunning to me. And these are all little storefronts. But there was a voice that came out of this little hallway. It was the voice of one of my elders. And he recognized me. And, you know, periodically he would disappear from our community and wouldn't see him for months or years at a time. And he was here.
He didn't know it at the time, but he was about to begin a photographic series that would come to be known as the Street Chiefs. It's a stark exploration of native homelessness in their homelands.
Well, this is a body of work for the last 30 years. Black and white, essentially, but I think it was a psychological state, an emotional state that I seen, or my perception, or the way they look back at me, these particular men. And that's what I could say I related to, not them as mere subject matters, but as my own uncles or relatives. This image here, I remember this man here, Arapaho, and so the title of this series sort of evolves with him, and so I remember him being from a lineage of traditional chiefs, and so I was thinking of this man's qualities. Even though he was on the street, he, for me, sort of exemplified those qualities even. And he brought commodities, the butter, surplus cheese to urban settings to distribute. And the Native American Center was one of those sites. So it was the tail end of the Ronald Reagan administration, I think. We call this the great Ronald Reagan cheese giveaway, you know, and I titled this piece. There was a Chickasaw and a Choctaw man who could, long-time street people, and they understood the code to survive on the street language, but they also spoke their first language because they had their own strengths, their own histories, Golden Glove boxers, decorated veterans in numerous wars. Well, this old man, he frequented the area, just an alley behind the Native American Center, south side Oklahoma City. Later, I met his grandson, who's seen this photo. Says, so that's my grandpa. Because he never seen his grandfather as a homeless man. They were gleaning, walking the alleys, recycling, selling, well, living minimally, but there's a spirit about them, I think that's really what spoke to me. Really kind of an undefeated spirit in a way. Something about that, I said, what is that? What happens to a people that they arrive here like this? So it was like context, always important, context.
Street Chiefs has been criticized by some who feel the series advances a negative view of Native Americans.
Part of my intent was my work to explore, investigate some of the negative, if you will, social, cultural realities in Indian communities and urban Indian communities. But I also believe that I know that my work has also addressed the positive aspects of vibrant Native communities as well. So I think, well, for me, it's the balance of those, that one doesn't exist without the other. And I think, for most people that drive by you, from the vantage point of your car, you're driving through Skid Row, you want to quickly go through it, but here are these host people, if you will, of this state, You want to see the dancing Indian, or that other constructed image of Indian culture that's not threatening or that's not questioning. Over 50% of the Indian populations today, I think, are living in some kind of urban setting away from the rural or reservation. And for me, I think the challenge was to see how I stay connected, or how I relate back there where I'm from. I'm working in a basement, a laundry room here in this apartment, and it's an old apartment, and obviously the artist or myself, I have to, it's a very alone experience. Well, it's a series I did under the working title or theme of the presence of our absence, the absence of our presence. And I've just taken some icons, of course, the cowboy, the more icons of America, and this has a sense, dealing with a sense of place. And of course, the cowboy has largely come to replace us as a symbol of the West, as us being the host people, indigenous people, and image. And so, of course, the great creator of image is Hollywood, and the visual image, film, video, the far-reaching power of image. And so I've long been interested in the power of image.
Today, Richard is a successful artist and actor who's appeared in over a dozen independent films.
The media in Hollywood has, of course, long told our story for us, and so now I'm realizing that through independent film, we're seeing that some breakthroughs from that, some departures from that. Indians love films too. Indians love stories, are great storytellers, and we have our stories, our narratives. I think, Indian people are hungry for visually, film, movies, entertainment, equally as well, and that they should be able to have something offered to them that somehow they could relate to as well, It's part of their greater experience.
Back home at Redstone, Cade's mother carefully prepares him for a ceremony of the Black Legging Society.
It makes me feel good to when she puts on my clothes because I feel like I'm getting the gift all over again. I don't really like this sometimes when I have to don't wear a shirt because it's ice cold.
In Blackleg, they have a position for two boys and 2 girls. The little boys, they call them Ade Tali, but they were actually herders. And they went out with the men on raids and for war journeys. It was the beginning of their training to become a warrior.
It's an honor to do that. My parents know why they selected me, but I don't really know.
My oldest son, Gabriel, and our middle son, Seth, they had that same position.
I thought that it would be hard to do this, but it's pretty easy, but it's a big responsibility.
The old Kiowas, they had so much respect for themselves, they had so much dignity, they had so much honor, you know, that even when it came time to dress, they were never in a hurry. You know, when everything is right, when everything's ready, then we'll begin.
During the ceremony, all eyes will turn to the youngest member of the group.
Sometimes I'll be the water boy, sometimes I'll put coal on the, so we can cedar off in there. And then we have to get ahead of the line when we have to dance. Adi Tali is very special boy in Kiowa, and Adi Matan means very special girl in Kiowa.
When Cade came up to the camp, he had his red cape on, he had the shield on his arm, he had a bouquet slung over his shoulder. He looked like one of the men that stepped out of one of these ledger drawings. And he came right up to the camp, and he addressed his mother and I very formally. "Excuse me, the men in the teepee would like for you to come in now."
I felt like I was one of them. Like I forgot that I was a kid. The bigger the crowd, the happier I get, and the happier my family gets. Because they're hardly surrounded by crowds, because we live here, so this is a big land. If it was a lot smaller, then we would have a lot of people. But this is big, so. But we're happy for people to come to visit us.
I've told my children, you have to come home. You know, I don't care where you are, I don't care what you do. You make time to come home for Ohama Lodge, and you make time to come home for Blacklegs. You have an obligation. Those old people, they went to prison. They were prisoners of war. They were selected by the Indian agent and the United States government, and they were punished. And you and I, you and my son, my children, we owe a debt to these old people because they stood up against arrows. They stood up against bullets. They stood up against cannons during the Indian Wars. They were willing to die to protect our language, the Kiowa language. They were there to protect the right to wear this Kiowa way of dressing for a woman, for a man. You know, we owe it to them. I feel like I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, teaching about my Kiowa traditions, teaching about the beadwork, how it fits into the culture of the Kiowas, how the stories fit together, how the language fits together, how the songs fit together. You know, now we've become so modern, very few women know how to cut up a chicken, much less how do you cut up a buffalo? How do you kill a buffalo?
Once there were buffalo as far as the eye could see. Their ranges stretched from Canada to Mexico, from the Ohio River to the Pacific Ocean. From 1820 to 1889, 30 million buffalo were recklessly killed for their hides and tongues. Railroad interests, farmers and ranchers paid professional hunters to decimate entire herds. When protection of the buffalo was under consideration by the Texas legislature, General Phil Sheridan opposed it, pointing out that the sooner the buffalo was eliminated, the sooner the Indian would be starved into submission. Within 100 years of the Lewis and Clark expedition, the buffalo had been reduced to just a few hundred animals. Today, the Cheyenne Arapaho are 2 of the 57 tribes that are bringing the buffalo back.
The bison is so important to the culture because not only was he part of our origin stories and our oral stories, but he was very important to us because he provided everything for us on a daily basis. His hides gave us clothing, moccasins. His hide gave us a teepee, a house to dwell in. But the meat provided our daily nourishment that we needed.
About 3 years ago, 3 to 4 years ago was when they were finally allowed to start taking over, having more pasture land and start expanding. We're in the process of doing an inventory, so we're looking at slowly getting our inventory done. Right now, the last head count we had out in the pastures was 280.
Ready? Okay. All right, go on, Biggins, hip. Go on, big boys, hip. Go on, Biggins, hip, 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 hip. Go on, one goes, y'all go, hip.
We'd like to get them up to at least 500 is what I think we have that we can get up to in a relatively short period of time. And still we're talking 2 or 3 years. And have enough land to sustain them, to be self-sustaining with.
Take these guys first and get him next.
We'll let him out with the herd because he needs to be ran. Yeah. Okay. All right, he can just go out with the rest of them.
They are grass-fed animals. I mean, that's what they're adapted to is grass. They don't need a whole lot of high-protein feed or anything like that, like some of the exotic cattle do.
Through our traditions of eating this buffalo, we lived healthy lifestyles. We had no disease. We had no illnesses. And that's what we want to bring back, is bring back the nutritional benefit part of a healthy lifestyle.
The Indian population has a high incidence of diabetes. So, and I think a lot of that is a reflection of the change in diet from the lean meats that they used to get off of the buffalo for a lot of higher starchy and refined sugar diets. I don't think the physiology of Native Americans adapted very readily to that change in diet.
In 2007, the Cheyenne Arapaho started a program to put buffalo back into the diet of the tribe.
It just started out as a one-time initiation to introduce the healthier meat to our diabetics and our elders at that time. So it started as a supplementation program. And then after that point, it became such a request that they started to request it more, and we kind of worked out a schedule with our farm and ranch program.
The participants receive a bag once a month when they come in and do their assessment, and then we'll give them, and that is usually at least once a week that they get it. In each bag, we usually give them one ground beef, maybe one stew, and one type of roast. But we have several different roasts. We have a beef round roast, we have round rump roast, we have short ribs, we have beef brisket.
A lot of the elders said that they prefer the buffalo to regular meat, and they can taste a difference after a while. And it's just amazing, I mean, that basically you go back to your roots. And it's things that were taught to us Growing up, it's the way things should be. If we want to be healthy, if we want our kids to be healthy, if we want our elders to continue to be healthy and be around for us, we have to go back to those.
Hello, Mr. Raven. Are you here to do your buffalo pilot project?
Yeah, ready for my assessment.
Okay, we can go back here. I have everything set up.
Today, the buffalo is part of an overall health program.
Troy came and volunteered for our buffalo pilot project. Like I said, we have 8 people currently in it right now, and Troy's one of them. He volunteered to come and let us do the testing and receive monthly supplement disbursements of buffalo meat.
They checked our weight, our height, and our blood sugar and blood pressure, and I found out that that I was diabetic through this program, which if I wouldn't have come here, I wouldn't have found that out.
Okay, now hold pressure.
I've tried buffalo before, and I liked it. And he said that it's a lean meat, low in cholesterol. So I said, well, then maybe that's something I should do.
He comes out every month, and we do an A1C every 3 months, and then the cholesterol screenings every month, and a blood pressure. And then we obtain his body measurements just to see if how his blood pressure is doing, if it's helping him. And he actually was the one that was diagnosed with diabetes now. So he came to us and said, no, I'm not diabetic. And then the first round we obtained his A1C, and his measurement was off the chart.
43. Went down, huh? You're sucking it in?
I do feel better. I'm more conscious of what I eat now than what I did before. More healthy.
We're starting to show, a little bit more of a maintaining in our glucose levels with our clients that we've seen and able to document. Overall benefits, the cholesterol numbers that we're looking at are staying within normal ranges, so that's good. We're not seeing any significant spikes.
Level 3. 3 is a good one. And to your time, how much time you want to? 30 minutes. 30 minutes. Press start.
The Cheyenne and Arapaho are offering the opportunity for exercise as well.
Well, they have 2 facilities, one here in Concho and one in Watonga. They have a whole assortment of different
good form.
Equipment, free weights, ellipticals, treadmills.
It takes everything. It's a whole lifestyle change, and he has been the one that has done it. He doesn't want to be sitting 3 days a week on dialysis. So.
And breathe. We've seen this program just grow tremendously. Everybody looks forward to it. It's become one of the strongest programs we have here of the Diabetes Wellness Program. And it's, not only just for the diet and the benefits that we're seeing, for our diabetic clients that are utilizing it more consistently, they prefer it. They're getting to where it's more of an everyday staple, so we're excited.
We've had other tribes call and say, well, how are you guys doing this? It seems to be working just like the Buffalo Project. Their people, they have a whole bunch of buffalo meat, and their people don't want it. And we have to turn people away up until our next disbursement.
These were dry pastured all winter. They didn't get hardly any supplemental feeding at all. Just enough to kind of keep them as tame as they are. And what we aim to do is doing it in the more natural sense. We hope not to use any herbicides or pesticides. We'll go back to the burning process that was here long before anything became commercial in this area.
We're going to do the south side of the river here. What Glory and Lily came up with, that love grass is on this side right over here. Is that love grass back over there. We're going to go ahead and knock that out first. And once we get that burned off, that'll be a good test fire for us too.
The tribes had maintained the prairies by intentionally setting fire to them. So what it does, it prevents the encroachment of brush and trees, helps eliminate some of the weeds problems, and it returns a lot of nutrients into the soil. And the buffalo like it. That's one of the reasons the tribe set the fires originally in the prairies, was to get that burn effect and provide fresh grass for the bison. And they knew that sooner or later the bison would migrate there, and it'd be easier hunting. So, so that's what we hope to do in our pasture management program, is to reintroduce fire into the ecosystem to help out with those problems.
The herd is growing, and the tribe is moving the buffalo to bigger rangelands.
To me, the fact that we're expanding our herd shows a re-strengthening of the tribe, you know, that we're actually moving forward with certain things. So there's a lot of symbolism that goes along with it too. To see us developing the herd and expanding it says something for the tribes in general. I think it's something that we can really be proud of.
Such a sacred and powerful animal, physically and spiritually, that he means everything to us. And without him, there's no way that we would have survived as a great nation, as a great people. Well, I think that the hope for future generations is to ensure the survival of the buffalo, but ensure the survival of our children. And through programs such as this, we can certainly preserve that, but we can also make a way and ensure that this animal is going to always be with us through generations to come.
Truly, you know, the most intense love that I felt, the profound love, is the love that I feel for Cade. You know, of my grandchildren, when I die, this is the child that will cry for me.
And when she is gone, Vanessa will have passed on a pride, a passion for the traditions, and a way of life that is in danger of disappearing.
Who gets cheated? It isn't me, it's my grandson and those little unborn Kiowa children. You know, they're the ones. The Kiowa culture and the Kiowa history, it's important for them. You know, it's human nature. Where did I come from? Who am I? What is my purpose? It's human nature to want to belong. I just hope that by doing this kind of work, I hope that I'm giving life to the Kiowa culture. Let it live for 2 more generations, 3 more generations.
Cade knows it's his responsibility to keep the culture intact so that one day he can hand it off to his children.
I would like to raise them how I am right now. Like, I would like to have them in two worlds. Like, they could probably be fully Kiowa and then just dress like that, or they could dress like me.
Culture is a living, breathing entity, and it can live or it can die depending on, it's like a plant. If you don't water the plant's going to shrivel up and die. But if you pay attention to it, you cultivate it, you water it, you fertilize it, you know, then this plant is going to blossom and become glorious.